Oh, thank God you got it.
Yeah, no, you don't have to take that job over. Your hands are clean there, sir. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the R2 podcast. Today, you've got me, Sean, and Dr. Alex Coleman on hosting this episode here with Doctors Marianne and Cody Dimaks of R2P Parker, All the Things fame. Today, we're kind of bringing you on to talk about chiropractic education, which is a loaded topic for sure, especially in our world. But with your guys' background, and again, I'll let you kind of introduce yourselves and tell your story, but now being in the realm and the trenches of chiropractic education, I'm sure there's a lot to talk about, good and bad. So that's what we're here for today. So without further ado, Marianne and Cody, I'll let you kind of introduce yourselves and give a little background history of how you got here.
That's always me. Big shockers. Hi, thank you so much for having us. We're pretty pumped to come chat with you. Like you said, we have a lot of a different perspective now of chiropractic education. So we're both Logan grads. I graduated in December of 11 and Cody graduated in August of 12. And we kind of decided to jump off the deep end and live outside the box a bit and move to California and start a cash practice right out of school. We had at the time been dating 2 months when we made that decision, 3 months.
Yeah.
Hindsight, it worked out well.
Yeah, right.
But
you know.
if you know, you know, yeah, there could have been some other outcomes, but we were game for the ride. And I had been to California twice and he had been to California once when we decided to move. So it was a really, really cool experience. We started in, so we both did a preceptorship in Long Beach, which kind of let us get our feet wet. And then the couple who owned that sports chiropractic practice that we both did our preceptorship with, hired me for us, like right after I got my license. They gave me kind of a flat fee. And then they just said, we keep what we keep. And they said, you can practice opening up a practice in California from the hours of 5 p.m. till 10 p.m. every day was my hours. So it was for that whole summer, it was really just me grinding. Cody was still in school. So he was in Tri-10, just itching and dying to be out with me. But it was a really great opportunity because I had, it wasn't enough to live on in California, but it was kind of enough to get it started. And so I would market during the day and then see patients at night. And then over the course of a month or two, I got my numbers up to about 25 patients a week. And then I started to hit my ceiling in that practice, which was the whole point, was me to outgrow it and get tired of the hours and out, like just expand. And so by that point, he was wrapping up, graduating. And so we opened up in a little 12 by 12 gazebo tent.
It was a tent.
It was a tent.
It was a pop-up. It was a legitimate outdoor pop-up tent.
An outdoor tent in an indoor gym.
Not like really a tent with walls, but like just the top.
Like, you know how it has like the canvas sides and then it had that like opening in case you had a fire in there. Which
like a circus tent?
Yeah.
I'm giving circus tent vibes.
A little more gray, less colors.
But the owner of the gym put like plywood as walls.
Oh God.
We made him give me a walls and a padlock because of HIPAA,
Yeah.
gotta take care of people's info. But we started, so this is kind of before clinic gym was a thing. And so we were right behind the check-in desk, and it was a cool opportunity to start building up some clientele in Orange County. And it was super low overhead. We had access to the entire gym. It was a great starting point, and you look back and you're like, okay, what if we could have done anything different? I think one of the things I would have done different is I would have stayed there longer and grown even more before we started our brick and mortar practice. But I'm not sure I would change anything, but if like from a business acumen perspective, that would have been a smart move for us. So we opened up our brick and mortar Maximum Performance Chiropractic in April of 13. So we just hit 10 years for that. We had about 2.5 months of working capital. That was
not a lot.
So you just hit the ground running. We were doing talks. Cody was a member of Equinox gyms, and we just built that network of people. It was rehab or active care focused. but really that general population that everybody ends up treating, even if you quote do sports and work with quote athletes. So it was great. It was a lot of fun. And then, fast forward 5 years or so. Yeah, 5 years.
Yeah.
And we had just gotten married. It was time to like start family discussions, and it was 7 years total there. And we were like, something wasn't matching. And we had this plan to expand MPC. We were going to start a new place, kind of that clinic gym in an industrial space. We were done with our commercial lease. We were looking for a new place, and we were just hitting barriers that really honestly had never existed for us in the past. And so we did some soul searching and digging, and we realized that what the universe was telling us was that California was not the place for us. And we needed to be closer to our families to start our own family. So we made the really hard choice to close our practice. And it was really, really tough. But our first decision was get to Central Time Zone. But as you guys know, as entrepreneurs at heart, you don't just start a business in a city you're not like committed to.
Yeah.
And so we didn't know where we wanted to live. And we were like, well, it'd be silly for us. We're about to like have little kids, and we don't want to be starting a practice at that point. So we decided to like get kind of maximize on the opportunity to pivot, decided to look into opportunities in chiro education, and Parker had an opening. Cody interviewed, got the job. By that time I was pregnant. So I waited till after we had Madeline. And I kind of just leap of faith that I would end up there as well. We felt confident that I would figure out a way to get in at some point. And then I started about 4 months after Madeline was born. So Cody started in May of 18, and I started in January of 19. So we're right at that kind of 5-year mark for Cody, at least.
Dang, awesome.
Yeah. Sorry I let you talk so much there.
That's great. You did a great job.
Par for the course.
Did better than I would have.
Yeah. Us men, we forget most things anyway.
Yeah.
He's like,
I forgot about half the stuff she said. So.
He's like, oh my God, I remember
We do that.
I was there for that.
The safari tent, as my patients called it.
Yeah.
The ones who lasted the whole time. They're like, I was with you since the days of the safari tent.
That's awesome.
So it was embarrassing at the time, but
It was a little embarrassing at the time. Looking back on it, though,
it was a little, I
come from
wasn't
humble
necessarily super proud of the location, but it makes for a great story now.
Yeah. So have your roles, so the roles that you assumed when you first started at Parker, are they the same as whenever you were there, or have they changed over the last few years?
different. So when I first came to Parker, I came on as a clinic faculty doctor in the clinic. So I was one of the docs where students would come in for their try 8, try 9 and 10 clinical stuff, right, with patients. And which I think was a good transition for me, because it was still like very interactive with patients. You know what I mean? One of the things that we did quite a bit when we were in Cali was when we weren't treating patients, we did a lot of like workshops, lots of workshops, a lot of teaching, very involved in the R2P Club at SCU. Since they had actually had just started it way back in the day, right? That piece was missing a little bit, kind of, when we were in a clinic, when I was in the clinic, and I was there for a year and a half. And then the PT2, like the active rehab course position had opened up. And so I kind of slid in and kind of did that in the fall of 2019. Yep. And then I was doing that kind of dual duty. So I was doing that
full-time jobs.
Basically 2 full-time jobs. So I was doing that, and I was doing full-time in the clinic as well, which was a lot. It was a lot. It kind of wore me down a little bit because I had to rewrite the course and everything, but did that for 2 trimesters, and then then I fully transitioned to academics, and that was it was a good transition. Do miss patient care quite a bit, not just with like students and stuff like that, seeing like the kind of light bulbs go off, but just in general too,
So I actually got hired to teach clinical nutrition, which I find to be kind of funny because it's not like one of my most out-facing focal points. but it's always been an area that I've been interested in, and I have a master's in it. So I was qualified for it. So that was what I was officially hired for. And then, so I started on as in the academic side, so not the clinical side. So I was teaching Tri4 nutrition, and then I was kind of mixed in a bunch of different labs, and it took about a try for my boss and my whole team to be like, movement's your thing, isn't it? And I was like, yeah. And so they kind of got to know, like, Cody helped the first R2P club startup at Parker. And so we just like, we're just kind of in that realm. And my boss was like, yeah, well, we need you to take the functional assessment course. It was, at the time, it was about half of the trimester was spent doing inclinometry, and the other half was in upper and lower cross assessment. Both valuable things to include in the curriculum. But they were kind of like, this is your jam, this is your area. So just start from scratch and teach what you think needs to be taught to achieve the learning objectives. So I totally rewrote the course, the typical academic flow, which neither of us had, is that you like kind of watch someone do a class for a while and then you kind of slowly change things over time. But both of us did a full rewrite overhaul of our classes, which I think is just fitting. And so now the
DMAC way.
yeah, well, you're just gonna, if you're gonna do it right. And honestly, I've learned a lot in the last now 4 years of teaching this class, and like I teach it way better. Like I almost feel bad for those first students. Like I was just showing up and we were just talking. But like now I like, for example, I realized that I like in functional assessment. So I'm pulling from, Levinson, SFMA, DNS, McGill, like just a mix, right? Kind of very in line with R2P. And, there's this kind of like push to like memorizing and learning the assessments. And I've never cared about the assessments. And I didn't realize I've never cared about the assessments until I was like, what is the thing I'm needing them to take home? And so this try, I actually pulled out the principles behind the assessment. So like, I'm really just using these assessments as opportunities to discuss like how the frontal plane, compensates for sagittal plane, weaknesses, and like how we shift planes, and how, the knee bone's connected to the hip bone, and like just intra-abdominal pressure, why it matters, why we use it, when we use it, what is the anatomy complicate, or like how can anatomy complicate an expectation for an assessment, like all of these things that just kind of naturally come out throughout a good quality course that I've realized that I need to put more of a direct focus on and ensure that each student is getting that. My roles switched last year.
Yeah.
I got an opportunity. The administration reached out and said, we are looking for someone to take on the Strength and Human Performance program. And so I took that opportunity, but I had kind of a caveat. I said, look, like, I want to make sure that I still get face-to-face time teaching DC students. Like, I don't care what that looks like. It just has to be a part of my job. And so that was one of my like non-negotiables, but we were able to find kind of a really nice, honestly ideal situation where I was teaching the functional assessment class. And then I was having this administrative, role in the Strength and Human Performance program, trying to build it up. And then a couple months later, the HR was kind of shifting some things around, and they were like, we're not sure that program directors are going to be able to teach in other programs long-term. And I would literally cut and run. I just like called my old boss. I was like, if there was an opportunity for someone, to return to the team, would that be, is that bridge open? And he was like, tell me you're coming back. And I was like, I can't confirm or deny, but now that this door is still open, I just cut and run. I need, like, it's where I need to be. And so I jumped back to full-time academics, kind of resigned from my role. And it's been like every time I've had an opportunity to reflect on it, I'm like, that was a good call.
Yeah.
It was a good move.
Yeah. So over the course of your now 4 or 5 years in chiropractic education, what are some of like the biggest changes that you've seen since you've been a part of it, in terms of where it was? At least this might be more specific to Parker, or it could be more general to chiropractic education as a whole. What trends have you kind of seen in the last 4 to 5 years?
I think one thing is I know where we are, Parker, there's a huge push to try and grab the student who's interested in movement, and who's kind of gravitated towards that. And within the curriculum, we're trying to do the best we can as a university to try and create the best doctors out there. You know what I mean? And I think some of the things that kind of have shifted a little bit are kind of for the better, for sure, in terms of like how kind of hours have shifted around their curriculum towards putting more hours here, and kind of like shifting hours and kind of like recreating things to provide a better product, so to speak.
I think that the biggest trends is all related to COVID, to be honest. And I think this is across the board in education, not even just at a chiropractic school, but I think it comes with bigger challenges because it's a chiropractic school. Like, we all learned that we could do stuff from home, right? And that was like a really important step for a lot of people in a lot of career fields, because like, if you don't have to be at an office, why is your corporation spending billions of dollars in space occupation when they could just save that and have a better like bonus structure or something like that? Well, so education did the same thing. And so we shifted online. Terrible, absolute worst situation of all time. And we are still I think we are all still trying to figure out how much of this do we let linger? What should we stay with? And then what do we need to transition? And then how do we upgrade instead of like downgrade? Because there was a lot of like technology upgrades that happened with the COVID switch. But here's the thing, we're in person. Like, I have to be touching that knee to evaluate it, and like, of course we can do a bunch through telehealth. I mean, Dr. Liebenson's like series on that taught us so much about what we can use telehealth for to like maximize outcomes and empower our patients. But like, we all know healthcare happens in person, or at least musculoskeletal healthcare happens in person. And so we are in this very interesting trend of like wanting to push forward in technology, but yet needing this like arguably antiquated model of like teaching. And yeah, so we're dancing that, and that's a very interesting thing. And I think that that's something that every chiro school is going to be struggling with. I would call it a struggle. I think it's a challenge for sure. And then I think overall chiro curriculum, like there's a lot of it that's just the same, right?
Yeah.
As everybody has experienced. I think Parker's really doing a great job of innovating and kind of re-looking at how we flow. Like, I really like the shift, and some people won't like this, but Parker shifted to they changed all of their adjusting courses they took all the named electives out. So there's no more named techniques in the core curriculum. They're all electives still. So of course you can still go down and learn everything you would like to learn about Thompson and I'm blanking, Gonstead and Activator and all the things that have a separate name, but they've really decided to like pull all hands on deck and do analysis and adjustive technique in general and have it be kind of a mixed bag in a good way of approaches that includes motion palpation and adjusting.
It's taken out the just pure, this is like this is the area we're going to adjust, this is what we're going to do, and it's kind of plugged in like, hey, this is how we assess this area, these are the soft tissues in the area, here's how we palpate them, here's the the joints, here's how we palpate and plane of motions, those the different things, and then obviously you learn the adjustments as well. One thing I've just kind of been a part of because I'm in chiro sciences, which is mostly the adjusting courses and stuff. So the students have to learn like all the the contact point, segmental contact point, line of drive, like all that stuff. Like the problem with that is like, aside from that line of drive is like kind of like probably doesn't exist. It just forces memorization. Like it just like forces you to try to memorize things, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Which like that like trickles on through the program. It just becomes about memorization. And one thing we're trying to do as like our department and departments is we're trying to like teach the critical thinking process,
It's-
but they have to they have to realize
There's a
students have to,
Band-Aid.
students have to realize that requires you to actually not memorize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Like
potentially fail.
If you don't have a photo, if you have a photographic memory, like
Oh, they
legitimate,
hate it.
a legitimate
They
photographic memory,
hate it.
if you have one, perfect, memorize it. But if you don't, then it doesn't make sense. Like, why
yeah,
would you
right.
try and
And it
memorize
also
things if you
doesn't
can't
help you.
memorize anything? It's just like, it just, so your brain has to shift a little bit. It takes a lot to kind of buy into that. So it takes a lot to not make the note cards. It takes
It's
a lot
cultural shift.
to not
Yeah.
make the charts with all these things, it's like, it's just, forces you to memorize and then you never really learn it or apply
So
it.
a quick side question, because I just took part 4 boards, and part of their thing is still the hands-on adjusting, like spinous left, what's your
Yeah.
line of drive stuff. So quick side note, what would you think has to change first, boards or school?
Well, the school's good. Well, that's the problem
Here's
is
the issue. It's
the problem is I got it. The problem is, here's the problem. Because what happens is the boards we have to prepare the students for boards, right?
Mhm.
Boards operates off of particular textbooks. If we were to change things in the curriculum, we ideally we would have to write a textbook essentially that has all the things that we would want to do, and then hey, instead of this, look at this. What do you think about this content?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it would have to change.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think boards is shifting. I think it's
Slowly.
it's
It
just a
is shifting
huge
though.
battleship.
It
I
is,
think
yeah.
that schools, honestly, I think that the answer is that schools need to make the conscious decision to create the best possible product,
Mhm.
period.
Mhm.
And then let the board's passing conversation be a side conversation.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I just think that just like every student actually does is they learn how to be a doctor, and then there's this whole boards things along the side. I
Yep.
honestly think that schools should just embrace that, because
Yeah.
we're never going to know what they're going to teach or test on. And you could have an entire physiotherapy section on diathermy.
Mhm.
And when was I supposed to become proficient at that, and why? Right. I think it's one of those things where I think if the schools make the choice and drive change, the boards will have no option. They'll become the DC diploma will become more valuable than the NBCE passing score. And so I think that it needs to come from a conscious choice of the schools to be.
Yeah.
I'm very biased in that, because I think that we should focus on those things
Yeah.
and not boards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like that.
That's fair. Because that was definitely the logic that I got from professors or administrators, was that board school is here to prepare you for boards, right? And which, I would have hoped that I would have paid $200,000 to learn how to be a doctor and then not had to do it outside, but maybe one day.
And what but if you look at 100 students and you look at the top 20% of and you're talking about the quality of doctor that was created by the school, right? So not grades, but top 20% quality doctors. I guarantee you that of that 20%, maybe a couple of the percents struggled with boards.
Right.
A overwhelming majority will have absolutely crushed boards with arguably little to no preparation, because part of becoming a doctor is to be able to assimilate information, digest it in a way that weeds it down to those baseline principles that can be applied to any question that you ask me. So you're just a better test taker if you're a better doctor, and test issues aside, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
If there's a problem to solve, if you've got the fundamental skills and critical thinking skills that create a good doctor, you should be able to pass a test. Again, there are some challenges to taking tests, of course.
Right.
Yeah. Good. So that being said, what do you think that schools as a whole, and obviously you guys have most experience with Parker, but you're also at Logan too, and you hear from other schools. What do you think that schools are set up well or positioned well for the next 5 to 10 years? And that doesn't have to just be academically, to produce that kind of doctor that we're talking about.
I think that, yes, positioned well and functioning well are two different things. I think the position is definitely there. I think that the team is also arguably there. And then I think that there's some barriers in the way of really good quality education that don't need to be there. But overall, I think that we should, I mean, we're still dealing with some of the COVID like backlash, right? Like we're
Mhm.
behind, I
Mhm.
think overall. Our students that just graduated, like our students that are in our critical thought classes right now, they spent their first developmental year of chiropractic school online.
Yeah.
Right.
Same.
So we just like, I can't tell you we're going to right that ship in the next, 2 to 3 years, but
Yeah.
after we can get that kind of managed, I think that we would be in that position you're describing.
Yeah. I think because the thing I go to is like, what happens in the next couple of years? How do we continue to shift to like, kind of like solving that question that you
Yeah.
proposed? Like, what is okay online? What actually needs to be in person? Because, one thing that my course is like, the active rehab stuff. So like everything's pretty much centered around like, skill acquisition, motor learning, right? So like environment is huge and testing environment's huge. So like for me, if I'm having, if we have students who take exams only online, then they have to go by themselves, then they get put in a room with a bunch of people like when you think about like, just let's take education or like test aside, like put that aside, when you insert any skill.
Yep.
Like you've only shot a basketball in an empty gym at
Yeah.
home, you know what I mean? Then all of a sudden you're in front of like hundreds of
Like-
people, like, what are you going to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
It's like that applies to like taking tests as well. It does.
And
right?
we watched the panic attacks when we came back.
Literally
Oh, I
legit,
bet.
like people,
Yeah,
legit.
like-
Yeah.
And I can't do anything to help because if you leave the room, it's a zero. Like,
Yeah.
So like we
saw it.
I think the next couple of years, if we it depends on like how well we continue to progress forward, and develop doctors who can perform and adapt specifically to any scenario.
Yep.
That's put in front of them with a patient or anything, out in public, whatever. I think exposure to various environments and being able to adapt, I think is kind of the big thing.
Yeah.
I think
And-
some things need to shift a little bit and hopefully they do. But I think we're set up in a good position to continue to press forward
Agreed.
and continue to build,
And the culture needs a little love. And you guys don't
Mhm.
even probably recognize it because you're not of that thread, but the wanting to adapt. Like
Mhm.
each individual needs to understand the value of adaptation and be willing to go into the deep to figure it out for themselves to come out a better like product. And that willingness is not the majority. It's kind of that, it's an it factor that could be trained, So like people who just have it, just know that adversity is just part of life and they just go through it and they're willing and open to that development. Like I have students who I get the most inspired when they come up to me in those first couple of weeks and go, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm so intrigued and I'm putting in the work. Is there a direction that like, how can I do better at how I'm doing? And I'm like, you're doing the exact work I want you to be doing, which is the fact that you don't know. And so you're like willing to dive in.
Yep.
Yeah. I almost wonder if that, like, if the concentration of that kind of student would increase in terms of like each of your classes, if it were harder to get in, right? Like if the entry level to get into school required you to be more motivated to becoming the end product, that's what I want to do, as opposed to just like, oh, I think it'd be a good career, or I'll make a lot of money at it. That those kind of people that just like will skate by, that I graduated with, that Sean will graduate with, that like, I don't know how you did it.
I feel like even the discussion of the instructors that need to find the willingness to change, or that it factor that you're talking about, exists in the clinical world as well. Because there's a lot of docs that's super easy 5 to 10 years out of practice to just like, what I'm doing works well enough and I'm just going to keep doing it. And not everyone has that drive. It's right. It's much easier just to coast off of what because it works, than it is to kind of rewrite the playbook.
Yeah. And that just because it's just how I'm wired, right? Is that like, that's just such a natural thing for me. We are having so much fun with this over here. You're right. Like I'm constantly at an internal battle of like, do we raise the expectations to enter? Like, would that be the thing that changes it? But then there's that underdog who like shouldn't have been in, and then they just absolutely pick up speed. And it's hard. It's hard to, because here's what I don't know. My literal job is to judge students, right? And of course, like there's no personal judging and everybody is treated fairly, but like my job is to weed in and weed out people who like, I'm constantly surveying the scene. So I know like there are people who stand out absolutely. I'm like, I would hire him tomorrow. Done. Like no further training needed before I would sign a contract for you type of situation. And then there's the ones who, have potential, and the ones who like, I actually reach out and say, I would like to mentor you because I see a potential that I don't even think you see. Right. And so they're the ones that need development. And then there's the ones that just could give two bleeps. They don't care. They don't want to be developed. They already have an idea of what they're like wanting to do, and they think they already have what it takes. And that's just kind of going to end up being a sad realization for either them or their future patients. But then there's the ones who they have the motivation, they want to do the thing, they're just going to really struggle with it. And those are the ones who like, there's some that end up being amazing. And then there's some who just don't have what it takes. And so I wonder sometimes what that entrance would need to look like to help us make sure that the people who were, supposed to be in this profession end up in it. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. It's a good thought. And then I'll tell you from a faculty shift perspective, like I have seen really cool being openness. So like Cody's department is the chirosciences and I'm in the clinical sciences. And so the clinical sciences includes radiology. And so then we have the phys dies, the diff dies, the ortho, the neuro, the functional assessment. That's my department. And then so I've gotten the chance to pull, because the analysis and adjusting technique courses are going to start integrating some of the things that we're talking about in the functional assessment class earlier. So like as early as try 3, which is amazing.
Nice.
I love this. So they all kind of came into my labs for a couple trimesters. So I got to like interact with a lot of them, and they're taking notes. Like I had one who would just like come around with me just to hear how I answered questions to students. And it was like, this person standalone, like he could totally be out in practice, fully functional, needing no help from anybody, but he had the humility and openness to be able to look at someone who's got 20 less years of experience than him and say, I have something to learn from you. Yeah. And like, that got me pumped up about what we're doing. Like it's just such a great example of like, they're out there and they're willing to be open and to change, and some won't. And I kind of just don't care about them. Yeah. I'd rather just focus on the ones who are.
Yeah. For those students that do have the drive to get better or the potential, do you think that one, chiropractic education or schools in general have the ability to serve those students well? And bonus question, if so or if not, what other resources do you think the students that have the drive, what resources do they use maybe outside of education or within Parker or any other schools atmosphere use that maybe those the others don't?
Do you have an answer for that?
I think to answer your first question, I think we can, if any school has the appropriate ratio of doctor to student in certain settings. I think that's possible. I think it is up to the instructor to identify who those are, because sometimes, you just don't know who they are in the group, right? So I think class size could slow that down a little bit. And to answer your second question, before you could answer the first question again, answer your second question, I think the one thing that I was missing at Logan was, well, one, we didn't have an RTP club. It didn't exist. And two, I didn't know what MPI was. I didn't know it even existed until after my experience after I graduated. So I wasn't exposed to those things. I thought I was alone. I'll be honest. Like I was in class, listening, but some classes where I wasn't necessarily listening, but I was there. I always showed up. I was there at every class, But I'm reading like rehab of the spine 2 at the time, reading low back disorders. Like I was like ripping through that stuff. And I thought I was like alone in the world of this stuff. Right. And then I get out, I'm like, what's this R2P thing, man?
Yeah,
like,
right. That's cool.
Where were you people?
So I think
Yeah.
I think being involved in something that kind of like that fuels you,
Mhm.
right? Whatever club that is. And one thing that I've noticed in my course is pretty challenging, but it's not challenging just to be challenging. It's challenging because I'm asking a lot of the students and I want them to be better doctors. I want them to be good, right? Dr. Morgan has a saying, we're not preparing you for your best day, we're preparing you for your worst day. And like I appreciate that, you know what I mean? And I tell them that, like, look, some parts of practice, it just sucks. It's not all cupcakes and rainbows all the time. There's parts that actually suck, man. So you got to be ready for that, So I think the being involved in a club, though, those students in my course, they actually perform really well, and they're good. Not that they're good at rehab, they're just good students, right? They're asking good questions, and like we're talking about people who probably won't do rehab a lot in their practice.
Mhm.
I'm talking about involved, not just an R2P club, like any club.
Yeah.
But they're involved and they're active. It just shows that you're willing to go the extra mile to be better.
Yeah.
Like you identify, to me, that shows that you have the want to identify gaps in your knowledge and or abilities and be able to close them and want to close them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you get into practice, it's like, if you suck at marketing, are you just not going to market? What do you like? You're not going to network just because you don't like talking to people. Like that's a terrible business idea, like you don't follow through on that. Right. So I think the getting involved, I guess, is kind of my second piece of that is like, something like R2P club, right. Or, and adjunct clubs that are kind of connected. I think that's where you take those individuals who are like, who've got it and they can grow. I mean, you got to get involved.
Yeah. I think that the schools, let's all come back a second, because like this realm, like our people, we are collectors, right? Like we are collectors of all the things. The alphabet soup is just an example of the collections. It doesn't have to, it's not the only thing we're here for is the acronyms or the initialisms after our names. That's not what we're here for per se, but it's an example of the fact that we collect things.
No soup for you.
I think that honestly, if you peel it back a little bit and look at what we actually need to function as chiropractors, I think that the schools can give those driven, motivated people the skills and tools they need without much additional information being put into the system. Like, I think that at the end, that person could be viable and functional. Now from a style and development, like, because and like, Alex, you're knowing now, like, how much have you learned in the last, how long has it been? 3 months? 2 months? 6 months. Compare the last 6 months to the last 3 years. How much have you learned in the last 6 months compared to the 3 years before?
Wow.
Astronomically different, right?
I would expect that.
That's what's going to happen to every one of those motivated pushers. And so I think that we are putting too much pressure on that driven, motivated student to accomplish something that's not even possible to accomplish prior to graduation a little bit. And I think whittling it down, and if you ask me, are schools giving them the tools that they need? Absolutely. Does it feel like enough to them? No, but that's part of who they are. So I don't think that it's an absolute necessity for schools to do a lot. I mean, oh my God, can we improve at every single thing? Yes.
Yeah.
But if we whittle it down and look at like fundamentals, do they have it? Yes. Now, what do they need to, it's all about fueling the fire though. So these are the examples of people who lose motivation if they're not constantly being pushed hard every single trimester. And so like sometimes that was phys-di and sometimes that was like a different course that was challenging. And then I think what happens is there's a dip. There's a big dip in academic rigor once it, and we see it at Parker, it happens right after Tri-6. The academic rigor drops. And it's not challenging thought processes and knowledge base as much anymore. It's like practical application, which to the motivated, driven person, they've been practically applying this whole time. So they don't feel challenged in a new way yet. Like they feel actually like they're jumping through red tape and hoops because they're having to learn the clinic system. That's the feedback I get every day, right? That's what they feel like they're being challenged with now. And so what we need to be able to provide those people is that safe space where they can feel like they're spreading their wings and growing and developing still. And I think that's why that, you know, whether it's club involvement, family involvement, church involvement, like it's just whatever keeps them afloat is what they're going to need. And it doesn't even have to be academic. That would be an interesting, like, but like that, I don't know if I've ever said that out loud, but I don't know if it's learning.
I think, well, I think it, I mean,
I don't think
it
it
is learning.
has to be learning.
No, it is learning. It's just not, it's not like lecture learning. Like
Yeah,
you've
it
got
could
to
be like self-development.
it's got to be exposure. Well, I think I think it's exposure to like cases in the critical thinking piece, right? So like
That's true. And getting inspired about where they're heading.
like people will come, you know, we'll just it's not just adjusting it as well. Like in the last 6 months, we're talking about like assessment, differential diagnosis, like just critical thinking of like rehab, like, oh, like having to jump from one thing, jump to the next thing. You know what I mean? There's no
developing your system.
You don't have like this list of regressions that you go, oh, let me go to this one. Like, no, you consider all these variables with the patient that you've experienced with them and that you have in front of you. And then you make a logical choice of what do I do with that, right? I think that's a big missing piece, that when you have that exposure in practice, or, you know, you go to a CBI or a preceptorship and they throw you into the deep end, you're like, I learned more in the last 3 months than I ever did in the last 3 years of the school. Well, it's not the school's fault. You just had a spike in variability. That's skill acquisition, big guy. That's expected, man.
Everybody is so shocked that he handed it back.
No shit.
Skill acquisition.
You need to go get that fire alarm. Cody's getting hot.
Yeah, but no, I think you're right. So it is like the opportunities need to be there for people to challenge their thoughts, right? Giving someone an opportunity to apply their knowledge, but honestly, this is the hardest word, authentic way. In an authentic way, not a pretend way, not a fake 40-year-old male presents with left flank pain. None of that. That's not helpful. It's not helpful. It needs to be authentic. So they need to be like calling up their cousins and saying, hey, how's your body doing? And like take a history, but not the FMNOPPQRST kind, like the conversation kind, the one that just sounds like two humans talking to each other instead of a checklist being checked, right? That's the stuff they need, I think.
Are you talking to somebody?
Yeah, but about what we do, like,
actually talk.
Yeah, you do have to talk to a patient.
Gross.
I feel like that was that was like a pivotal moment in the middle of school for me and some of my friends. Was like whenever it felt so fake when we started school, because we had the I don't know if they still do it. They stopped it for a while, the standardized patients and the assessment center and all that. And it was like, I'm trying to be empathetic. I get it. But at the same time, I know you're not having this thing.
Yes.
We have 5 minutes, man. Can you spin that?
Exactly. And
but like whenever our friends would call, like from back home, and they would inevitably, because they knew you're in chiropractic school, you came home for Christmas break, and they're like, hey, I got this thing going on with my ankle. Do you know why it hurts?
yes, I do.
And at the time, no.
I'll pretend.
Well, I will here in about 20 minutes. Yes. Right. Yeah. And that's the intrigue, right? We need to that's the carrot that needs to be dangled. And I think that's something that schools need to improve on, especially for those motivated students. And I think it's an interesting focus on needing to have complexity when if you look at our actual day-to-day interactions with patients, unless you're serving a very specific population, like, the elderly or in like the VA system, like complexity isn't always the thing. Like it can also just be a shoulder thing.
Mhm.
You're gonna treat a lot of those. And so it's what's wrong with having their 23-year-old friend be the patient for this example today. Like you're going to see 23-year-old people in your office. So let's get a couple of those under your belt so that when the 65-year-old complex case comes in, you actually have a tool to be able to apply to that. Whereas like, no, let's just start with the absolute hardest possibility and go from there.
Yes.
I think I talked to Corey not that long ago about this. I was like, dude, the amount of stuff that's just like low back pain, like it's just all it is. Like you're really thinking like this has got to be super, like there's something going on. It's just like, no,
Mhm.
it's not. He's like,
No,
yeah,
just-
Desensitize,
yeah.
build
A lot
up
of it's pretty boring,
integrity.
honestly. There's just a lot of boring parts, but when that 1 or 2 case really comes in, then your fire gets lit. So
Mhm.
I think that Corey's talking about earlier, or Cody was talking about earlier, mixing up letters here, but how there's just a lot of kind of crappy parts of practice sometimes, right? And I think one of them is there is just some monotony to it. But when there's that exciting case that comes in, that's just like, I have the tools for this that many others probably don't.
Mhm.
And I've seen that already in the past, what has been 4 or 5 months for me on preceptorship, that you have people that have been like, I've been to 2 PTs, I've had 2 surgeries. This hasn't worked.
Okay.
And they're like, I've done the dead bug. I've done the
That was
burn
actually a requirement to see me. You'd already need to see like 4
Yeah.
PTs, 6
Yeah.
chiro.
Every
none
one
of
of
them
our
worked.
patients. Because why would you pay 150 cash for a first visit if you haven't already tried your like baseline insurance option?
Yeah.
Right.
And then it's almost like you see the quality that you pay for. Like you kind of do get what you pay
Yeah.
for sometimes. But this patient I'm thinking of, and one of the ones I did the case series on, was he'd done the dead bug, he'd done the bird dog, but it was with a PT that was like, here's your exercises, go do them. We'll see you in 20 minutes. So never got cued correctly. And we just went back through his old exercises, but did them right. And he's like, wow, this feels so much better. It's amazing sometimes how little the profession or of musculoskeletal care conservatively does in general for their patients.
Well, like that, just that alone, like if the amount of people I hear and complain about, oh, my patients don't do their exercises. I'm like, well, what do you do? Like how, like I always go to like, okay, first thing I ask is like, how many exercises are you giving them? First of
5.
all,
12,
okay.
12.
Yeah,
8.
give a pack of 3, 5
Here's
pages, right?
Here's your textbook.
But the
of
biggest
Yeah.
question I always ask is like, do you even know what their goals are? And
Mm.
are your exercise, the exercise that you're giving the patient, are they geared towards the goal? But more importantly, does the patient know that the exercise that you're teaching them directly impacts the things that they want to do?
Yeah.
If you never say that, then they won't effing do it. They
Nope.
won't do it because it's just a thing that they have to do now in their daily life. Then you never create context for the patient and relate it back. Like, this is why we're doing this. This is why we're doing this exercise. And if you do that, you get the buy-in for the exercise. And if you're
Yep.
giving them like 1, 2, maybe 3 things, to do, and usually it should just be a warm up anyway, and just, get them with somebody they,
Yep.
I don't know.
I don't
like
think
it.
they're like, I love the complaining. Well, first, like the first response to those people is tell me you don't do the clinical audit process without telling me you don't do the clinical audit
right.
process. Like it's literally number 1 goal is patient buy-in for
Yeah.
them to be able to, especially if you're using a pain audit.
Okay.
No cap, it's the cap. But also like, hi, I would just like to tell you about my clinical failure, right? Like, what are you going to do about your non-compliant patients? I didn't have any non-compliant patients.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a non-compliant patient in my office. And like, yeah, there's going to be those ones who like the road is a little longer, but that's my failure.
Yeah.
The patient not complying with my recommendations is my failure.
Yeah.
And it is because I either didn't choose the right one that matches their environment and matches their lifestyle in a way that is easily accessible, or 2, I didn't educate them well enough on why they need to step outside of their typical box and do something different, right? Like that's on us, 100%.
It's got to
Yeah.
be related. It's got to be something they enjoy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
There's too many ways to do this to have non-compliant patients.
Yeah. I always love putting someone in a dead bug who has back pain was squatting, and like, look, that's the bottom of the squat. They get their eyes go around. They're like, oh
You just
yeah,
take a
it
picture
is.
and then
Yeah.
you like
Yeah,
turn the
you
phone,
just
you
turn
put a
it,
lock
like-
on it, and then you
Yeah.
Like,
struggle
this
with
is a
it.
squat. But yeah, like Cody's point is exactly true. Like with the golfer that I had do rotational type stuff or something kind of leading towards that. And he's like, why does this matter? Well, what is golf? It's a rotational sport. Oh, no kidding. Yeah, it is. So it might not
Do you
look
wanna
like a
hit
golf
the ball
swing.
farther.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Do you want to play golf? Or because like it's that simple
What
explanation
golfer
of
says no to that?
yeah, right, they actually want to do is golf. That's it. If that could be a career. But it's like, yeah, it's the simple things of this might not look like a golf swing at this moment, but it's a foundational part of it.
Mm, I like that.
That's big. For sure.
Last thing that I think the question that we have lined up here for you is get a little greedy with this answer, and brag about yourselves. What kind of things are you kind of cooking in the kitchen right now? What things do you want to see make its way into chiropractic education, seminars? Like, what kind of stuff are you guys working on that is exciting you at the moment?
Well, I kind of already did it a little bit. I created an elective, a rehab elective at Parker. So I've kind of, she put up with me last try of putting it together. Because last try was the first go around, and I kind of did everything concurrently through the trimester. It was a lot of work.
No one has ever put as much work into a course as Cody Dimaks put into his elective.
Basically, if I have my lectures are recorded, if there's a research paper that's on there that I talk about that's related to like whatever topic I'm going on, I read 10 more before that one got on there. It was a lot. So I think that for me, to answer your question, that's why the elective comes into play, is more strength and conditioning, like authentic strength and conditioning. I think we're still too married to the TheraBand, internal, external shoulder rotation, clamshell, only clamshell, time and place. I said there would never be a time and place. And then I had somebody who had immediate, like a post-op hip replacement. We had to do
Yep.
clamshells. And then I had
Yep.
somebody who had like a bone spur in the IVF that literally paralyzed glute medius. So like I'm doing clamshells. I couldn't do anything else, right? So like, yeah, you say you're never going to do it, then you end up, insert,
Careful what you say never
insert
to.
foot in the mouth, right? So,
Yeah.
but I think like giving everybody that stuff, I think that needs to have a shift, and we need to shift more, in my opinion. This is solely my opinion, and hopefully I'm staying on par with your question. I think we need to kind of start looking back with how we're teaching the students, like what exactly are we doing? We're not just here to learn how to adjust. We're here because our patients experience pain, for lack of a better word, right? Or they have decreased function. How are we, what's the framework that we're operating within? And I'm a big ecological dynamics guy. I'm a constraints-led approach through and through. But everything we do, everything I've always done, I realize now fits within that. Adjusting, soft tissue, exercise. It's all constraint manipulation, and like all those things impact, individual psychosocial processing and pain too, but it's through the bio, right? So I think that having a kind of that explained more, that taught more, that explained through the courses of like where this fits within some those types of approaches. I think shifting kind of towards that and placing emphasis on communication with patients and being able to talk to patients, I think those would be the big things.
I'll brag for him. One of the big things that he's been up to lately is I think you're one of the only faculty at Parker that's on kind of like the Parker seminar circuit, which is really cool to see him doing. So we're going to be in Orlando next week. And so he got asked to do it. His 1 hour, everybody who gave feedback had his 1 hour talk, said it should be 2. And so we got that. So they asked him to expand his 1 hour talk into 2. And then he got asked to do an additional 2 hours integrating golf into the discussion. So I'm really excited to see those next week.
Yeah.
That's going to be exciting.
Yeah. So speaking is kind of one of the things that's been cooking in the kitchen as well.
Nice.
I will say that you didn't say this, but I think it needs to be said that it's like the way I've described your elective is it's like a tour through different methodologies of rehabilitation. So it's like, you're going to spend time in neurodynamics. You're going to spend time in the neurodynamics hospital. You're going to spend time in the MDT hospital. Like you're just kind of like going through a lot of those, but I think it all comes down to that kind of N=1, like get people back to being active, which I've told people that the number one elective they need to be taking at Parker, if they plan to work with patients, is the advanced rehab elective, and then think about taking mine after that if you want to.
Yeah.
There you go.
So for me, kind of twofold. So like I have an elective as well that I've been developing. I've been sitting on it, but I finally pulled the trigger. But it's gonna be multimodal rehabilitation of the pre and post, or prenatal and postpartum patient. It's a need, it's an absolute that a lot of the population at Parker has been wanting and waiting for. So it's going to serve that need. I think it's going to be really interesting when they get there in the first week and I'll be like, ha, I got you. We're not going to treat people any different than we treat regular patients. They're going to hate that.
Yeah.
I hope nobody's listening to this podcast.
Yeah, right.
No, but like
secrets.
Yeah, right. And I think that a general theme is to keep mamas moving, and, just understanding that pregnancy it's not like a disability, right?
Mhm.
And postpartum is a healing process in the same that an ACL rehabilitation is. Obviously, like the parameters are different and the challenges of life, but there are people who have ACL repairs that have challenges in their life too. And so we don't treat them any different. We just apply our fundamental knowledge to them, understanding the physiology, biomechanics, and all the things around it, which is essentially what the course is going to go into.
Meet them where they're at,
Yeah, it's no different. Like, oh, I'm a prenatal, like you don't have to be a prenatal chiropractor to see prenatal patients. Like that's,
Right.
I hope I'm going to bridge the gap there a little bit so that it doesn't become this like far off niche that only people wearing, ripped jeans and having really light and airy photos can do. Is that okay? All right.
That's awesome.
But the other thing that like, I really like where we are at Parker right now, like I feel like Parker is starting to understand that we are resources that are willing to be utilized, and they're starting to utilize us a little bit more. I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. I sometimes don't enjoy this, but most of the time do enjoy being a bit of the squeaky wheel in a discussion where, like, if I can be the person in the room screaming at the top of the like mountain that critical thought needs to be our focus, then I'll do that. Right. And so, and
she's really good at kind of like keeping the train.
Yeah. And I've been implementing, and we talked about kind of like that adjusting class, like it's called integration. And so it's horizontal and vertical in education. And so we're doing a lot of that. And so I'm excited to kind of have been given the green light to keep doing a lot of those things. And it, like, I just love the feedback I get from students after we have that first N=1 conversation, where it's like, it doesn't matter what the intervention that works on the most people is. The only thing that matters is the intervention that's going to work for you.
Yeah.
And so the protocols are out, the long-term treatment plans are out. Like, it is patient focused, results focused, motivated care. And it's kind of fun to be where we're at. And then just kind of working through, like, because like, these are things that came natural to us. We didn't really learn them. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not that I'm like, oh, hey, cool. Like, it naturally came to me. I'm so awesome.
That's your brag.
It's your brain.
But like, it's just who we are. And so it's been interesting to be in an environment where we're not just being who we are trying to understand why we are the way we are, which sometimes is not the greatest discussion. But like, why do I think this way? And so like breaking it down into a way that a student could understand it. And so like,
the way it is,
I've developed, like, I tell them, like, my job is to give you a framework to start with and then throw away as soon as you're ready to throw it away. But you can always come back to it if you're struggling. And that's, I think, how we use the protocol. Like, SFMA is a great example. If there was a protocol to live in, it's going to be the one, right? Like, it's just awesome. The sound, like the thought process behind it's sound. But again, if you just walk into an algorithm, your brain is not it's not in the driver's seat anymore. So it's just not the way that we should be operating. But when you're lost, go back to it.
Mhm.
especially early on, right? Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or even if you're 10 years in and you're just like, I have no idea what to do. You just open up the book,
You have a framework.
let something hit you in the face, right?
Yeah.
just
Theoretically.
I just throw a kettlebell in their hand or a
Yeah.
barbell.
Ooh,
Just
a
say,
great
just
quote.
walk.
Great quote. I had from a PT I know here in Flower Mound. And I'll shout her out here, Dr. Brooke Miller. She's a good follow. She on her story today, she said all roads lead to load. And I was like,
Write that down, write that down, write that down.
whoa, ever.
That's awesome.
What is lead to
Good
live?
stuff.
There was a lot of this in my
All
week.
roads lead to live.
I love that.
Okay, Cody. So, well, both for both of you. Before we get to the rapid fire question, I have a special request. So, I was doing shrugs the other day in the gym, and
Mhm.
I feel like I'm just leaving something on the table.
It's got to be activation
Explain.
of levator labii superioris.
Yeah.
We're gonna pull a video clip for the promo for this. Can you give the audience a demonstration of what you mean?
Aren't those good? Those are great, right?
You need to bring them back, man. I'm telling you.
It's tonic, it's a sign of tonic muscle dominance, actually. Hit a neurological threshold.
Oh yeah. Okay. So rapid fire. Let's see. First one. What would you be if you weren't a chiropractor?
Go.
Or related to the chiropractic field at all. No MSK,
Yeah.
nothing in that realm.
Can I have a tie?
Sure.
I
Oh.
would be a teacher or a therapist.
Okay.
Like a
Yeah.
cognitive behavioral therapist.
Yeah.
Mental health therapy.
I can't pick like strength and conditioning.
I was just about to say you can't be a trainer either.
Can be a gorilla though.
Yeah.
Gorilla
Part
trainer?
time. How about
There
He's
you
like,
go.
let's throw him
Yeah.
into the gorilla thing. They would not kill him.
Oh my God.
One of us.
Yeah. This is a new guy. I don't know. Man, I don't really know.
It's supposed to be rapid.
I know it's supposed to be rapid fire. I don't
Can you
know.
wear short shorts and coach a sport?
It'd probably be like some type of coaching though, but like I just got rip my eyes out thinking about that. Yeah, I don't know. Probably try and golf all day or something.
Ted Lasso.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Be a professional golfer. That's
Rapid
good.
fire, DMAC. Let's go.
Yeah.
The brain.
Speed of smell.
All right. Let's go with favorite vacation spot, which maybe you guys did together. Maybe it was prior to.
1, 2, 3.
Valentin Imperial. Rivera Maya. Yeah.
The only
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
The only answer.
This is actually going to limit our world, like our world views. Like, I don't think we're just kind of stuck on
It's
it.
gonna be hard to leave. It's too good.
Ooh,
So
I'm
good.
gonna come back.
We're going to leave a lot of beaches unturned and unvisited.
Yeah.
because of
No.
it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I feel like the last question has to be asked because one of your students brought it up in last season, towards the end of last season. And this was brought up in the episode that'll come out after yours. So courtesy of Tristan Collins. Is a ravioli a Pop-Tart?
I remember this. Yeah. Did you hear this conversation?
I didn't. I am unaware.
Is a ravioli a Pop-Tart? You go.
Well, wait a minute. Isn't a Pop-Tart also like a ravioli?
You decide.
Yeah, the world's your oyster.
Well, which
The
one
world's
has
your
the
Pop-Tart.
like the higher, like what in the
Importance?
phylogenetic, like
Yeah.
tree?
Kingdom, species.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Drinking the chocolate milk.
I think, I mean, they're both
Well, here's the
Of
deal. Here's the deal. Like
bread.
you're very like you don't have Pop-Tarts. You don't have.
they both have red.
It's only
filling.
sweet. It's only sweet feeling. Ravioli, you can have anything. You can have like anything, literally,
Can you?
right? You can. You cheese. You can have like.
Can you have a
pesto,
sweet
you can have-
ravioli?
Yeah,
Those are just
You
both
can.
cheeses.
A dessert ravioli? Is that a Pop-Tart now?
Like you have cheese.
I'm sure you could put
can have
cream.
pesto.
I'm sure you could put cream cheese in there.
There's also cheese.
Yeah.
You could put cream cheese.
So I think a Pop-Tart could be classified as a pastry that gets is a pseudo that wears a pseudo ravioli suit.
Fair.
Okay.
It's almost like I think a Pop-Tart is a pastry that wears a tuxedo shirt
Okay. Okay.
Instead of an actual.
instead of an actual
tuxedo.
tuxedo.
Okay.
Little Ricky Bobby in there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Marianne, your verdict.
I
Tristan
have
will judge you.
questions.
She's
My
gonna
answer
ask me
is
questions.
no. If any of those two things would be higher on the list, it'd be a ravioli. So I'm gonna say that a Pop-Tart is a ravioli.
Okay.
I don't think my argument is clear, but it's rapid fire.
I don't
We're
think the
just-
question's clear.
I see what you're saying. You're saying a ravioli cannot be a Pop-Tart, but a Pop-Tart can be a ravioli.
Correct.
It's like all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey's bourbon.
Mm.
Yeah, so I need to look into some like
Ancestry.
Yeah. etymology, not entomology, etymology, right?
Mm.
I need to look into like, what does the word ravioli mean? Because if it means two bread slaps
Two
and a
Pop-Tart.
filling,
Tart pop.
if the definition of ravioli is two flour slabs with a filling, I think
You
that
look up the definition of Pop Tart, it's like to lavio the rab.
Yeah.
yeah, to be continued.
I don't know.
That's
I don't think Tristan realized this was going to be such a one featured question, but
She didn't think it was gonna be a.
she highly.
Oh, this
I
was
would
planned from
consider.
the start.
oh yeah.
She knew.
Yes.
She knew.
She, like, of all the people, she's been front and center for the tangent train, so
Oh.
he should know.
Now is stuffed crust the ravioli.
Stuffed crust pizza,
Yeah.
Easy.
but it's attached to the rest of the pizza.
I got
Is it?
Have you never had pizza with?
Yeah.
Have you ever had stuffed
ravioli.
crust pizza? It falls off, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just falls apart.
It's too heavy. It's too
Yeah.
heavy.
Is a calzone a ravioli?
Ooh.
yes, absolutely.
See, these are deep
Just-
thoughts.
Just
We
bigger.
gotta look it up. We
But
gotta find out.
Isn't a ravioli pressed on all four sides? Isn't a calzone folded and pressed in the arc?
Yes.
I mean, could you, like, is a fold not a press?
The problem is
A
I'm
fold
thinking
is
about
not a press.
I don't want
I'm
ravioli
with
now.
Marianne
Thinking,
actually.
A fold is a fold.
I mean, technically, a press is also a fold. You're just pushing, it's like how much force.
So are you saying a quesadilla is a panini?
I think that the regression of a press is a fold.
is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh.
If we use the
Wait,
strength
hang
and
on now.
conditioner.
Hang on now.
Conditioning.
You know the question you just asked, right? You know there's a
Say,
thing
is it a
behind it, right?
sandwich?
Is a hot dog a sandwich? Where is this? There's somewhere that they're in New York or New Jersey, so they're New York, I think. They're trying to charge the hot dog vendors tax. They're trying to make them to charge tax or something like that because they're saying it's a sandwich. And so they've deemed that no, a sandwich or a burger has only covered on two sides. This is covered on three sides.
Yep. The
Nah.
sandwich, the hot dog, the bread is attached.
Yes,
That's the
yeah,
difference.
yeah.
So then is
That's
a
a
hot
real
dog
thing,
more like
yeah,
is
yeah.
a hot dog more like a sub?
Hmm,
Because a sub would have
yeah.
Mm. Ooh,
But
so is a sub a
a
sandwich?
sandwich. You should call it a sub sandwich.
Technically.
Hang
This
on
has
now.
gone
What if
way
I
off the
take-
rails.
What if I take a baguette and I hollow the baguette out
Ooh, like a bread zeppelin.
and I stuff it with stuff?
We have one of those places. It's amazing.
Yeah.
What is that? Now it's on four sides.
They call it a bread zeppelin. Well, it's a circle, so there's not any sides.
It's in a tube, man.
It's a
It's in
tube.
a tube.
A hot dog tube. It
What
keeps
is
getting
going
worse.
on?
It keeps getting
Now we're
worse.
back to a modified hot dog.
Yeah.
Man.
What is this podcast about?
Just-
With that,
These are the important
Yeah.
conversations. In
yeah,
fact,
right. Just
I'm
skip to the
gonna,
end.
we're gonna integrate these into the curriculum.
Yeah, as
stat.
you should.
Mm.
This will
This
pick
is
out your
what-
winners. and
Horizontal
losers.
and vertical.
This is what the motivated students need.
It is what they need.
I retract my previous answers.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So with that, how can people find you if they want to continue this hot dog or ravioli situation?
No,
What's the best
man.
way to reach out?
Oh,
They can we're not really on the old practice Instagram
Yeah.
anymore. But if Instagram for me, it's our old practice was Instagram was Max Perform Chiro. And so I naturally adopted the Instagram handle of fake Max Perform Chiro.
Not
So-
be confused.
So that's one way to reach out. Yeah.
You can reach me through at fake Max Perform Chiro, but you have to request more videos.
Mm.
And then I
Yes.
will,
Yes.
no, I'm joking.
I do-
Minus,
It's a desert.
I do have like a bunch
He's
of
got 'em.
content written. and
He's
everything.
got
Just,
them.
Release them.
We all, yeah. Mine's DR Marianne Dimak, MARYANNE DIMAK.
Cool. Yeah.
And
Instagram's the way to
then
go.
if you really like, that's honestly a great way to
Yeah,
communicate.
easiest. Yeah.
But we also have our MDMAC and CDMAC at parker.edu emails if you ever need anything official.
Cool.
Yeah.
We appreciate you guys coming on. This was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Anytime.
Awesome. You're,
Who knows
you're
how to-
welcome. So with that, yeah, we appreciate it. And we'll talk to you guys in the next one.
Yeah.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.